Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Daniel Carter, and for 5 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage. I had a wife I loved, a stable career, and dreams of starting a family. But all it took was one discovery, a stain on a piece of clothing, to unravel everything I thought I knew. At first, I tried to ignore the signs, the late nights, the distant stares, the subtle lies. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And when I finally uncovered the truth, it wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on a level I never imagined. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to be the fool in this story. I still remember the exact moment my world began to fall apart. It started with a simple text message. I had just wrapped up a long day at work when my phone buzzed. The name flashing across the screen made me smile. Lisa, my wife. The woman I had spent the last 5 years building a life with. We had dreams, big ones, starting a family, buying a house, growing old together. But something had fell off ever since we returned from that camping trip with my boss, Ryan Hudson. Lisa had been different. Distracted. Cold at times. Little things, like the way she used to laugh at my dumb jokes, had changed. She seemed distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. I told myself I was imagining it, but deep down, I knew better. That night, as I tossed our dirty clothes into the hamper, something caught my eye. Lisa's underwear. At first, I hesitated. It felt wrong, like I was invading her privacy. But something about the way they stuck together made my stomach churn. A thick, sticky residue had dried into the fabric. I lifted them to my nose, and the sickeningly pungent scent hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't mine. I dropped them like they were on fire. My breath hitched. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. There was no mistaking what I had just found. For a moment, the world blurred around me. The bedroom, the walls, the framed pictures of us smiling on vacation. It all felt like a cruel joke. I wanted to believe there was some logical explanation, but I knew better. Lisa was cheating on me. I sat on the edge of our bed, gripping my knees to keep myself from shaking. My mind raced with questions. Who was it? How long had this been going on? Was it just one guy, or were there others? I needed proof. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through our recent texts. Nothing unusual. No late-night messages. No suspicious contacts. But I wasn't stupid. If she was cheating, she'd be careful. My mind flashed back to the camping trip. Lisa and I had gone with a small group from work, including Ryan Hudson, my boss, and a few of our colleagues. It had been a fun trip, or so I thought. Lisa had always been friendly with Ryan, but I had never suspected anything before. Then I remembered something. The second morning of the trip, I had woken up early to go fishing with some of the guys. Lisa had stayed behind, saying she wanted to sleep in. When I got back, she was acting off, her cheeks flushed, her voice a little too cheerful. I had chalked it up to morning grogginess, but now I wasn't so sure. I needed answers. The next morning, after Lisa left for work, I called a lawyer. Ruby Carter came highly recommended, an expert in family law. I told her everything, from Lisa's strange behavior to the damning evidence I had found. "Are you certain your wife is being unfaithful?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. I swallowed. Not entirely, but I need to be sure. And if she is, I want a divorce. She sighed. Most divorces are no fault in this state, meaning you don't need proof of infidelity. But if you want to use it as grounds and gain leverage, you'll need solid evidence. Photos, videos, recordings. I clenched my jaw. How do I get that? I can hire a private investigator, she said. Someone discreet. If your wife is cheating, he'll find out. I exhaled slowly. Do it. Understood, she said. In the meantime, I suggest acting normal. The last thing you want is to tip her off. Easier said than done. By the time I hung up, my head was spinning. This wasn't just some paranoid suspicion anymore. This was real. That evening, when Lisa got home, I forced myself to act normal. I kissed her, asked about her day, smiled like I wasn't crumbling inside. But when I looked at her, really looked at her, I saw it. The guilt behind her eyes, the way she hesitated before answering simple questions. She was hiding something, and I was going to find out exactly what. The day after meeting with Ruby, I got a call from Mark Jennings, the private investigator she had recommended. His voice was sharp, to the point, the kind of guy who had seen it all and didn't waste time with pleasantries. I understand you need answers, he said. I can get them, but you need to be prepared for what you might find. I swallowed hard. I had already imagined the worst, but hearing it spoken out loud made it feel more real. I just need the truth, I said. Good. Then here's what we do, he continued. First, I'll be tracking her movements. I'll need access to her phone. Do you know her passcode? I did. Lisa wasn't exactly cautious with things like that. She probably never thought I'd have a reason to go through her phone. She's at work now, I said. Her phone is on the kitchen counter. Perfect. Download this app. He sent me a link. Once installed, it'll run in the background. I'll be able to see her location in real time. You won't need to check it. I'll handle everything. I moved quickly, my hands only slightly shaking as I followed his instructions. Within minutes, Lisa's phone was compromised. I felt guilty for a split second. Then I remembered the stains on her underwear and the way she had looked me in the eyes and lied the night before. This will work, I asked. Mark chuckled. It always does. I exhaled, gripping the phone tightly before setting it back exactly where I found it. What else? Does she still use the landline? He asked. Sometimes, when she calls her parents. Good. I'll set up a device to record those calls. And I'll give you something else, an audio recorder small enough to hide in her purse. If she's sneaking around, she might talk to someone about it. We need every bit of evidence we can get. I hesitated. I hated the idea of spying on my wife like this, of turning my home into a surveillance zone. But then I reminded myself, she had done this to us. Not me. Fine, I said. When can we start? Tonight, Mark said. Lisa had no idea, but from that moment on, every step she took was being watched. That evening, she came home late. Work ran over, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. Sorry. It was a simple excuse, but my gut told me she was lying. Oh yeah? I asked, keeping my voice casual. What kept you? Just meetings, she answered too quickly. Then she kissed me on the cheek, but there was something missing, warmth. I studied her face, searching for cracks in her mask. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated for half a second. If I hadn't been watching so closely, I might have missed it. Of course, she said, forcing a smile. Why wouldn't it be? Because I know what you're doing. But I didn't say that. Instead, I smiled back and let her walk away. That night, after she fell asleep, I retrieved the small audio recorder Mark had given me and carefully tucked it inside her purse. I positioned it near the bottom, underneath her usual clutter of receipts, gum wrappers, and makeup. If she talked to someone about her secret life, I would hear it. The next morning, she grabbed her purse and left for work like nothing had changed. She had no idea she was being monitored from every angle. By noon, Mark called me with the first update. She went straight to work this morning, he said. No detours, no suspicious stops. But tonight's what I'm interested in. Why tonight? Because she's got plans, he said. My heart pounded. What kind of plans? Your boss, Ryan Hudson, is throwing a party, Mark said. Guess who's going? I clenched my jaw. She didn't mention anything about that, I said. Of course not, Mark said. She told one of her friends that she's working as a waitress there. Supposedly, someone called in sick, and Ryan offered to pay her for the night. My blood ran cold. She was lying to my face. Again. So, what do you want to do? Mark asked. I exhaled sharply. Let's see what she does, I said. Give me everything. Already on it, Mark said. I hung up and gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Lisa had no idea, but the walls were closing in on her. And soon, I was going to have all the proof I needed. That night, I sat in my hotel room, staring at my phone like it held the answers to my entire life. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional honk from the city streets below. I had been on enough business trips to know this routine well. Finish meetings, grab dinner, unwind with some TV. But tonight was different. Tonight, my marriage was on trial. I waited until the clock struck 9 p.m., the exact time Lisa had told me she'd be working at Ryan Hudson's house. I dialed her number. It rang twice before she answered. Her voice was breathless, as if she had been caught off guard. Hey babe, she said. What's up? I clenched my jaw. Just checking in, I said, keeping my tone even. How's the party? Oh, it's fine, she said quickly. Busy though. A lot of guests. Something in her voice didn't sit right with me. So, you're really waitressing? I asked. Seems weird that Ryan would ask you last minute. There was a pause, too long, before she replied. Well, yeah, she said, forcing a chuckle. One of the servers got sick, and Ryan was desperate. He's paying me $150 for the night. Easy money. I stared at the ceiling, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. This was Ryan Hudson we were talking about. My boss. A man who had the arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences in his life. A man who had always acted like the world was his playground. And now, he was playing with my wife. All right, I said finally. I'll let you get back to work. I love you, she said, almost like an afterthought. I didn't say it back. I hung up and immediately called Mark. She's at Ryan's, I said, voice tight. She just told me she's waitressing. Mark let out a dry laugh. Well, he said, that's funny because according to the GPS, she hasn't left Ryan's bedroom for the past hour. The blood drained from my face. No, I whispered. You're sure? Positive, he said. And I have photos. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the phone so tightly it creaked. Send them to me, I said through gritted teeth. A moment later, my email pinged. I hesitated before opening it, already knowing what I was about to see. But nothing could have prepared me for the sheer, gut-wrenching reality of it. The first photo showed Lisa, half naked, wrapped around Ryan like she belonged to him. The second, my stomach twisted violently. It wasn't just Ryan. It was his son, Matt, and another 3 men I didn't even recognize. Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was completely gone, lost in a world I didn't even recognize. A sharp pain shot through my chest. 5 years. 5 years of love, trust, and marriage, reduced to this. I barely noticed the tears slipping down my face. I had been prepared to see her with one man. But this was something else entirely. I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. The rage was boiling inside me, threatening to consume me whole. Dan, Mark said quietly, are you still there? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. I'm here, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, man, he said. I know this isn't easy. No, it wasn't. But this was the proof I needed. The proof that Lisa had destroyed everything we had. I wiped my face and steeled myself. Send everything to my lawyer, I said. You got it, Mark replied. Do you want to hear the full report when you get back? I exhaled slowly. Yes, I said. Every last detail. I ended the call and stared at the ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal settle over me like a thick, suffocating fog. I had loved this woman. I had planned a future with her. And now? Now, I didn't even recognize her. My marriage was over. And Lisa had no idea that the moment I stepped off my flight, her entire world was about to crumble. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The images of Lisa tangled in bed with Ryan, his son, and those strangers were burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, the same woman I had vowed to love and protect, betraying me in the worst possible way. By the time my plane touched down the next morning, I had already made up my mind. Lisa wasn't just losing me, she was losing everything. I walked through the airport in a daze, barely aware of the world around me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Lisa. I let it ring. She called again. I answered. Hey, babe, she chirped, sounding way too cheerful for someone who had spent the last 2 nights with my boss and his son. I missed you. Are you back yet? I gritted my teeth. Just landed, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Oh, do you want me to pick you up? The audacity of her acting like nothing was wrong nearly sent me over the edge. No, I said, my voice clipped. I'll take a taxi. There was a pause. Are you okay? She asked, her tone suddenly cautious. For a second, I almost laughed. Was I okay? I was about to burn our marriage to the ground. Of course, I wasn't okay. I'm just tired, I lied. I'll see you soon. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, I walked through the front door of our house. Lisa was standing in the kitchen, smiling. She looked exactly the same. The same soft blue eyes, the same dimples, the same woman I had once believed was the love of my life. But now, I saw her for what she truly was. A liar. A cheater. A woman who had shattered our marriage for a night of filth. She walked toward me, arms outstretched. God, I missed you. I took a step back. Her smile faltered. Dan. I forced myself to play the part. I shrugged. Just exhausted. The trip was long. Oh. She hesitated, then brightened. Well, why don't we order takeout tonight? Have a little date night. The sheer nerve of her trying to play the perfect wife after what she had done made my skin crawl. I have some work to catch up on, I said, brushing past her. Maybe another night. She frowned but didn't push it. That was the first time she noticed something was off. As soon as I was alone in my office, I pulled out my phone and dialed Ruby Carter. I have the proof, I said the moment she picked up. A pause. Then how bad is it? I exhaled sharply. Worse than I ever imagined. I sent her the files Mark had collected. It only took a minute before she responded. Oh my God. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. All right, she said, her voice professional but firm. We're moving forward. I'll draft the divorce papers immediately. Given what we have, this should go in your favor. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand down my face. Take her for everything, I said. I want her out of my house, my life. I don't care what it takes. Ruby hesitated. Dan, I get it. But let's be smart about this. We'll hit her with infidelity as grounds, which will give us leverage. No alimony. No financial support. Just a clean split. That was fine by me. Do it. And Dan. Yeah. Keep acting normal, she advised. Don't tip her off yet. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. But keeping calm around Lisa? That was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever done. That night, she tried to kiss me. I turned my head, letting her lips land on my cheek instead. She pulled back, brows furrowed in confusion. You sure you're okay? I forced a smile. Just tired. She searched my face for something. Doubt, maybe. Suspicion. But she found nothing. Okay, she said softly. I love you. I didn't say it back. I just nodded and walked away. Because the next time Lisa heard those 3 words from me, it would be followed by, but I don't love you anymore. I sat at my desk, staring at the divorce papers Ruby had sent me. The folder was thick, filled with damning evidence, legal jargon, and the official end of my marriage. Lisa had no idea what was coming. I had spent the past 2 days keeping up the act, pretending to be the same exhausted husband who had just returned from a business trip. But every second in her presence felt like walking through fire. The way she smiled at me, the way she casually texted on her phone, probably to Ryan, made my blood boil. But tonight was the night I ended this. Lisa walked through the front door just after 6 p.m., dropping her purse on the couch. Hey, babe, she said, flashing me a sweet smile. Dinner plans? I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. The divorce papers were on the table in front of me, neatly stacked. Beside them was the manila envelope filled with photos and recordings, the proof of her betrayal. I didn't return her smile. Sit down, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. Lisa's expression flickered with uncertainty. Dan, sit down. She hesitated, eyes darting between me and the documents on the table. Then, slowly, she lowered herself into a chair. What's going on? She asked. I slid the manila envelope toward her. Open it. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for it. She pulled out the first photograph, her face still neutral, until she saw what it was. A shot of her and Ryan, tangled in bed. She blinked, her breath hitching. Then she flipped to the next. Ryan, his son Matt, and 3 other men. I saw the exact moment she realized her life was over. Her face drained of color. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Dan, she whispered. I can explain. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. No, I said, my voice steady. You can't. She flipped through the rest of the pictures, her fingers trembling. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked sick, like she might throw up right there at the table. Is this, her voice cracked. Is this why you've been acting so distant? I let out a dark laugh. Distant, I repeated. Lisa, I've spent the past week watching video footage of my wife sleeping with my boss, his son, and random men like it meant nothing. So yeah, I guess you could say I've been a little distracted. She squeezed her eyes shut. I made a mistake, she choked out. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I snapped. I grabbed one of the photos and held it up in front of her. Lisa, this wasn't a one-time thing. This was repeated betrayal. You lied to me. Over and over again. Tears welled in her eyes. Dan, please. I slammed the divorce papers in front of her. You're done, I said coldly. I've already filed. You'll be served tonight. Here's how this is going to go. No alimony, no financial support, no second chances. You're going to sign these papers, pack your things, and leave. Her lips trembled. You're kicking me out. I folded my arms. What did you expect, Lisa? That I'd just let this slide? That we'd work through it? She wiped her tears, shaking her head. We can go to counseling. Please, Dan, we can fix this. I let out a slow, bitter exhale. No, I said. You don't fix this, Lisa. You live with it. She let out a broken sob, her shoulders shaking. Where will I go? Not my problem, I said coldly. She looked up at me, her blue eyes glossy with tears. You're really doing this? I tilted my head. What did you expect? She didn't answer. Her hands clenched into fists, her tears turning to frustration. You weren't perfect either, she spat. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have. Don't. I cut her off sharply. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. You made your choices. You destroyed this marriage. Silence stretched between us. She wiped her face, inhaling shakily. I loved you, she whispered. I felt nothing. The Lisa I married died a long time ago, I said. I don't know who you are anymore. Her face crumpled. Then, slowly, she picked up the pen and signed the papers. Her hands trembled as she set the pen down. She let out one last broken sob, her eyes full of defeat. I stood up. You have until tonight to get out. She didn't argue. She just nodded, stood, and walked away. And just like that, it was over. Lisa was gone by the time the sun set. I stood in the doorway, watching as she loaded the last of her bags into her car. Her eyes were red from crying, but I didn't feel sympathy. I didn't feel much of anything. She lingered for a moment, gripping the car door, as if waiting for me to say something. A last-minute plea, a sign that I'd changed my mind. I didn't. Instead, I simply said, "Goodbye, Lisa." She swallowed hard, nodded, then slid into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and just like that, she was gone. I exhaled slowly, running a hand down my face. It was over. Or at least, I thought it was. The next morning, I was in my office, finalizing my resignation letter, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, expecting maybe a call from my lawyer. Instead, a familiar voice snarled in my ear. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Ryan Hudson. I smirked. Right on time. Ryan, I said coolly. You sound stressed. You think you're smart, don't you? He spat. You think you can take away my toy and walk away like nothing happened? I clenched my jaw, but forced myself to keep my voice steady. Lisa isn't a toy, Ryan. She's a grown woman who made her own choices. And she's not my problem anymore. Ryan let out a dark chuckle. You think you won, don't you? Oh, I know I did. There was silence on the line. Then, his voice dropped to a low, menacing growl. You don't know who you're messing with, Dan. I own this town. You think you can just waltz into a new job and pretend like I don't exist? I exhaled sharply. There it was. The power trip. The delusional belief that he was untouchable. You don't own anything, Ryan. And I'm done talking to you. I hung up before he could say another word. I had barely set my phone down when another notification popped up. Voicemail. I played it on speaker. You listen to me, you little sh*T. You drop this lawsuit, or I swear to God, I will make your life a living hell. You have no idea what I'm capable of. I smirked, saving the message and forwarding it directly to Ruby. Let's see how that threat holds up in court. That evening, just as I was settling into my new piece, a knock sounded at the door. I checked the peephole and instantly felt my blood run cold. Ryan, Matt, and two of my former colleagues from the office. For men, all standing outside my damn house. I let out a slow, steady breath. All right, if this is how they wanted to play it, fine. I reached for my pistol, unlocking the safe beneath the table. I had no intention of using it, unless I had to. But I wasn't about to let four men storm into my house and try to intimidate me. I kept the weapon behind my back as I cracked the door open. Ryan's face was twisted in anger. Let's talk, he sneered. I stared him down. I have nothing to say to you. Matt stepped forward, fist clenched. You humiliated my dad. No, I corrected. Your dad humiliated himself. That set him off. He lunged forward, only to freeze when I pulled the pistol into view. Try it, I said coldly. Ryan and the others stiffened. Even in the dim porch light, I saw the moment they realized this wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. You think that scares me? Ryan scoffed. No, I admitted. But maybe the fact that I already called the cops will. As if on cue, sirens blared in the distance. Ryan's expression darkened. He knew he had screwed up. You bastard, he muttered. I took a slow step forward. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to turn around, get in your car, and leave. And if I see you on my property again, I'll have you arrested for violating the restraining order. You? Red and blue lights flooded the driveway. Two squad cars screeched to a stop, and within seconds, two uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting on their holsters. Ryan and his men froze. One officer stepped up beside me. "Sir, are you all right?" I nodded. "I am. But these men aren't supposed to be here." I handed him the printed copy of the restraining order. "I want them removed." The officer skimmed the document, then turned to Ryan. "You four, turn around, hands behind your backs." Ryan's face twisted in rage, but he didn't resist. He knew he had lost. As the cops handcuffed them, I stepped closer. "You thought you were untouchable," I murmured. "Now look at you." Ryan glared at me as they hauled him to the squad car. "This isn't over," he hissed. I smiled. "Yes, Ryan," I said. "It is." And with that, I shut the door, locking him out of my life for good. 3 months passed faster than I expected. The lawsuit against Ryan was brutal. He fought it with everything he had, but he underestimated me, just like he had underestimated what the law could do to men like him. In the end, the judge didn't just rule in my favor. He humiliated Ryan in court. "Your conduct in this matter is utterly reprehensible," the judge had said, glaring down at him. "You manipulated an employee, destroyed his marriage, and used your position to enable a toxic workplace environment. Given the overwhelming evidence, I am awarding the plaintiff $1 million in restitution." I'll never forget the look on Ryan's face. It was the first time he had ever faced real consequences. And it was only the beginning of his downfall. Word spread fast. Within weeks, his biggest clients dropped him, his reputation crumbled, and the once arrogant CEO watched his empire burn to the ground. As for Lisa, she never contested the divorce. She signed the papers without a fight, probably because she knew that if she dragged this out, I'd release the photos. By the time it was finalized, I felt free for the first time in years. I had just gotten home from work one evening when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Lisa's mother. For a second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But something in my gut told me to answer. I picked up. Bernice. Her voice was shaky, fragile in a way I had never heard before. "Dan." She took a deep breath. "It's Lisa." A chill ran down my spine. "What about her?" She tested positive for HIV. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I should have seen it coming. I had spent weeks looking at those pictures, those videos. I had seen how reckless she had been. No protection. No hesitation. And now, she was paying the price. Bernice sniffled. She wanted to tell you herself. "I know you don't owe her anything, but could you come by? Just for a few minutes." I exhaled slowly. A part of me wanted to say no, to leave her to deal with the wreckage of her own making. But another part of me knew this was bigger than my anger. "I'll be there soon," I said. I arrived at her parents' house half an hour later. The moment I walked in, I barely recognized Lisa. She looked thin. Hollow. The woman who once cheated on me without a care in the world now looked like a ghost of herself. She gave me a small, sad smile. "Hey, Dan." I didn't sit. I stayed by the doorway, arms crossed. Bernice excused herself, leaving us alone. Lisa's fingers fidgeted in her lap. I don't know how to say this." "Then just say it," I said flatly. She swallowed hard, nodding. I screwed up. I let out a dry laugh. "That's an understatement." She winced, but didn't argue. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. And now I'm paying for them." I didn't respond. She bit her lip, then whispered, "I got it from one of them, at Ryan's party." I nodded. "And does Ryan know?" She hesitated. "Not yet." I sighed. "You're gonna have to tell him." She let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, that's gonna go well." Silence stretched between us. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "I'm sorry, Dan." And for the first time since this nightmare started, I believed her. Not because she wanted forgiveness. Not because she was trying to win me back. But because she had finally accepted what she had done. I let out a slow breath. "I forgive you," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. "You do?" "Yeah," I admitted. "But that doesn't change anything." She nodded, wiping her face. "I know. I don't deserve you back. I don't deserve anything, really." I didn't argue. She looked up at me, forcing a smile. "I want you to move on, Dan. Find someone who deserves you. Get married. Have kids. Be happy." I studied her for a long moment. And for the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of peace. "I will," I said. She let out a shaky breath. "Good." I turned to leave, but she stopped me with a soft voice. "Think of me sometimes, okay?" I met her gaze. A part of me still hated her for what she did. But another part of me knew that this was her final punishment. Living with the consequences, knowing she had destroyed the one good thing she had. I nodded. Goodbye, Lisa. She gave me one last look before I walked out the door. I never saw her again. A couple of weeks passed after my final conversation with Lisa. I had pushed it all to the back of my mind, burying it beneath work, gym sessions, and the slow, steady process of rebuilding my life. I told myself I had done everything I needed to. I had won. But life had one last cruel twist waiting for me. It was late evening when I settled onto the couch with a cold beer, flipping through the channels. The news was playing in the background, just mindless noise, until I heard his name. I froze. My heart stopped. Local businessman Ryan Hudson, his son Matthew Hudson, and a woman believed to be his lover were found dead earlier today in an apparent murder-suicide. I sat up straight, gripping the remote so hard my knuckles turned white. Authorities believe Ryan Hudson fatally shot the two victims before turning the weapon on himself. The screen flashed with images of Ryan's mansion, police tape, flashing red and blue lights, officers standing in clusters, speaking in hushed tones. And then, Lisa's face appeared on the screen. Victim identified as Lisa Carter, ex-wife of local IT specialist Daniel Carter. The beer slipped from my grasp, shattering against the hardwood floor. Lisa was dead. The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I fumbled for my phone, barely able to think straight as I dialed Bernice's number. She answered on the first ring. I didn't even have to ask. She was sobbing. "Oh, Dan," her voice cracked. "She's gone." I gripped the phone tighter. "What happened?" They think she told Ryan about her diagnosis." Her voice trembled. "And he lost it." My stomach twisted into knots. Ryan had always been a selfish bastard, but this was beyond anything I had imagined. "He killed his own son," Bernice whispered. "And then Lisa. And then himself." I ran a hand down my face, trying to process it all. Just weeks ago, Lisa had been sitting across from me, telling me she wanted me to be happy. She had finally faced what she had done, had finally seemed ready to accept the consequences. And now, she was gone. A deep, heavy silence filled the line. Bernice sniffled. I just wanted you to hear it from me before you saw it on the news." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. There was nothing left to say. Lisa had made a series of terrible choices. Ryan had made his. And now, it was over. For real, this time. Lisa's memorial service was small. Her parents invited me, and despite everything, I went. I stood in the back, hands in my pockets, listening as they talked about the Lisa I used to know. The girl with the bright smile, the teacher who loved helping kids, the woman I had once believed I would grow old with. I didn't cry. I didn't know if I even had any tears left for her. Instead, I let myself remember the good times, the version of Lisa before she became someone I no longer recognized. And when it was over, I walked away. A few months later, I was finally feeling like myself again. The lawsuit had been settled, the money deposited into my account. I had cut every last toxic thread tying me to my old life. One Friday afternoon, as I was leaving work, my coworker Cynthia Stone approached me. She smiled, leaning against my desk. "Hey, cowboy." I arched a brow. "Cowboy." She grinned. "You always have that serious look, like a gunslinger ready to take someone down." I chuckled. The first real laugh I had in a long time. "We're going to the hitching post for happy hour," she said. "Come with us." I hesitated. The old me, the one who was still drowning in anger and betrayal, would have said no. But that version of me was dead and buried. I nodded. "Yeah, I could use some good company." Her smile widened. "Great. See you there." As she walked away, I exhaled slowly, feeling something strange stir inside me. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, leaving my past where it belonged. Behind me. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just a story about betrayal and revenge. It was a lesson in self-worth, resilience, and the power of letting go. For years, I believed that love meant sacrifice, that commitment meant forgiving anything, enduring everything. But love isn't supposed to destroy you. It isn't supposed to leave you questioning your own worth. I learned that trust, once broken, can never truly be restored. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for them to hurt you twice. I also learned that anger, no matter how justified, is a cage. I could have spent my life drowning in rage, plotting my revenge, but in the end, walking away with my dignity intact was the greatest victory. For anyone who has ever been betrayed, don't beg for love. Don't chase after someone who doesn't value you. Respect yourself enough to walk away. And most importantly, life doesn't end with heartbreak. No matter how painful the loss, there's always a chance to start over, to heal, to love again. And that's exactly what I plan to do.